MinorityEye stopped by the Columbia Convention Center for the premiere of the highly anticipated documentary Spitting Anger, Venom of a Fatherless Son. The documentary addresses the underlying issue of anger that dwells in young black males as a result of not having a nurturing relationship with their fathers. I took some time to talk with Executive Producer Kenneth Braswell about this epidemic in communities of color. Let's get into why we're here today. We're screening your new film, Spitting Anger. Want to know why Spitting Anger? Why this movie? Why this movie?
Well, I start first with it's new to everybody who sees it. For me, it's a project that's been a year in the making. We started showing Spitting Anger in January of 2014. It has been in over 60 cities, 5 festivals, 3 of them international, and it continues to evolve. And so it started out as a film, to really address, how particularly black men and boys process the anger of not having their children in their lives. Because as a practitioner, as someone who did direct services, as someone who provides capacity building services for organizations, and when you talk directly to men who are fatherless, it's almost instinctual that at some point you are going to have to deal with a measure of anger that they harness as a result of not having their fathers in their lives. And sometimes that anger can look extremely venomous. Not only venomous in the way that they express it, but venomous in the way that they articulate it and they process it and then they act on it in our communities. And so it's one of those things that we don't pay enough attention to. And when you're talking about African American communities where 73% of our children are being born into out of wedlock households, which doesn't necessarily mean that fathers aren't in their lives. But what it does say is that over time, they will spend little to no time in the lives of their father because they are non-residential. It's just the nature of the beast. People move on, they blend families, they have other children, they lose contact. Many of us try to stay in contact, stay connected. But life is life. I always say you wake up in the morning and life happens. And so this whole issue around fatherlessness and beginning to deal with anger and emotion and pain, particularly for men who are not reared to express that in a very nurturing way, because we've been told, get up off your knees, stop crying, dust yourself off, and keep it moving. We have not developed a language that allows us to express exactly what's going on with us without being vulnerable at the same time.
Okay. Would having it growing up without your father for a black male, would that be an excuse for violent behavior or acting out? How would you address that issue?
It's never an excuse, but it is a reason. And whenever you have a reason, you have to address it. And what happens is when you start saying that it's an excuse, you take away the accountability of having to address it. And so you always have to address it as a reason. There is a reason that Walter Scott ran from those police. It wasn't an excuse that he had to run away from them, because when you say he had an excuse and he ran, it disconnects us from looking deeper into why he ran. But when you say it is a reason he ran, you have to then look at what was going on in his life that caused him at that very critical moment in his life to decide to engage in an action that was deadly for him and many black men who look like him. And so when you're talking about children who grow up in fatherless households, we say all the time that that's not a death sentence. And so my mother raising me in a house by herself wasn't a death sentence for me. However, cereal was made to be eaten with milk, not with water. And so you can eat it with water, but it doesn't taste the same, it doesn't look the same, it doesn't react the same. Children who are born of 2 parents are not meant to live without either of their parents. And so when one is missing, there is an ingredient that is missing in their lives. And that's not an excuse. That's a reason that then says to you that when one of those parents is missing, there is something that is missing in that child's life. And sometimes, and it hasn't been researched enough to really tell, And you see these guys, some of them will use the fact that they don't have a father in their lives to do the exact same thing that their father did to them, which is what I did with my first daughter. And then some guys will have the same thing happen to them, and they'll say to themselves, I don't care what happens, I will never be my dad. And he will throw himself into being the best father he could possibly be for his children. It's a personal choice. And so when you look at that, there isn't an excuse. But even that guy, the one who says, I'm going to take care of my child no matter what my dad did in my life, doesn't disconnect him from the absence of his father in his life, because what he is doing is he's using all the holes that his father developed to fill in himself in order to be the best dad for his father. And I said earlier, you can compensate, but you can't replace.
Okay. Want to look at this. In filming the film, you've talked to a lot of black males who grew up in fatherless homes. And so I know you got tons of research and insight. So is there any advice you can give to young ladies who are married to black men who grew up fatherless and now have children? Is there any insight into how to react or how to interact with this male now that you've gauged from the research in the film?
That is a extremely difficult question to answer for several different reasons. One is because I'm a father of 4 girls, and one of my girls, my oldest girl, spent a significant part of her early life without me in her life. And I can clearly see the impact of that on her today. And so there's nothing I can do about the emptiness that she feels from that time in my life other than try to fulfill the times that we have now. My 2 middle ones have known, my youngest daughter has known nothing but me in her entire life. And I can clearly see the impact of me being in her life. My third one, who was actually my stepdaughter, has never had her dad in her life. But when I look at her, I've been the only one that she knows as a father in her life. But the same things that I see in my youngest daughter, I see mirrored in her. My son has only known me in his life, and the nuance with my son is when my son was born, his mother and I were married, and he has never waken up a day in his life other than when I was on the road without his father in his life. And so when you take all 4 of those things as a personal perspective for me, trying to figure out how you give the advice to girls who do not have fathers in their lives is very difficult, because I can give you the simple answers. The simple answers are make sure that they're engaged with a healthy, sober, responsible male in their lives. But we know the nature of the world and society today. We have to pay close attention to the safety of our girls, particularly ones who do not have a very clear perspective over what real manhood looks like. I had a conversation I think it was today or yesterday, and I was talking about my daughters, and I was saying to somebody that one of the most difficult conversations that I have with my 2 daughters, one who's getting ready to turn 16, the other one who's getting ready to graduate in 2 weeks from college, is how do I equip them to look for the danger in men who don't look dangerous? Right? How do I equip them to do that? What is it that I give of them so that they can spot that particular type of man? And the answer was continue to work on cultivating an atmosphere of clear, constant communication between the 2 of us. And so that when she's telling me about dude, she may not see something in him that she may say to me, and I'll be like, I know that move. I did that when I was, I know what that looks like. Right. And so the real answer is to just make sure that they have responsible men in their lives that care about their well-being as human beings and as girls, as opposed to sexual objects, because that's what happens with our girls, and it's very hard to do that when you don't have your own lens as to what a responsible man is supposed to look like.
Right. I guess my last question for you is, you directed this film, you did the research, and you not only told the story, you inserted yourself into the story and told your story. It was a lot of emotion in the film. Can you talk about the emotional path that this film caused, or the emotional changes in you, or revelations that you saw when filming this film?
The emotion was raw before I did it. It was rawer when I did it, and it's rawest now that I understand it. Not only because I understand it in me, but I clearly understand what it looks like when I see it in someone else, and I could never see that before. It wasn't until I had the revelation on what it looks like. And so for me, and for many people, or many men like us, fatherlessness is a badge. We carry it like a badge of honor. I didn't have my father in my life. I'm doing okay. I'm all right. No, you're not. But we treat it like a badge of honor. It's almost a liken to celebrating our boys when they come home from prison and not celebrating them when they come home for college. And so we have this extremely skewed idea of what masculinity looks like. We have still not addressed a clear definition for boys or men, particularly black men, what masculinity looks like for them. We've done a great job over the last 30 years or so defining what femininity looks like. Separate from what we thought it was in the olden days, it has now been redefined so that it includes a level of empowerment, it includes a level of self-esteem, of awareness of who our women are. It includes all of those things that give them a more full definition of femininity. We have not done the same thing with men. And so we struggle with when we can't protect or provide what does real masculinity look like. And so if I'm changing my kid's diaper, right, is that still masculine? If I'm on a train feeding my kid a bottle, is that masculine? If I lose my job, right, and my wife is now working, or she's making more money than me, is that masculine? And we haven't had a conversation with our community to give these dads, and that was one of the revelations that I had in doing this film, that much of what we struggle with is our own self-identification of what a man really looks like. And so when you look at our kids, our youth, they really struggle with it because they clearly don't have an idea of what real masculinity looks like. And they have defined themselves as men by how media has shaped what that looks like for them.
Well, Mr. Braswell, thank you for taking the time. We could go on for
Yes, we could.
hours. You very powerful conversation. But if somebody wanted to find out your schedule, what cities you're going to be in next, or how to get in contact with you, could you leave us some contact information?
Absolutely. The easiest way is to go to Google and type my name in, Kenneth Braswell or Fathers Incorporated. We pop up all over the place. But however, we do have a website, fathersincorporated.com. We have a website for Spit and Anger, that is spittandanger.com. We have a website for our newest film coming out, Dark Hearts, that is darkheartsfilm.com. But the easiest way, Facebook, Twitter, all of those things, obviously we have, but the best way is to Google Fathers Incorporated or Kenneth Braswell, and you find your own way to me.
All right. Mr. Braswell, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.